Hey there guys, Noah here, and welcome back to another Vanguard discussion video. Over the past, basically, week, we've started to, actually, it's been a couple weeks now that I think about it, we've started to see a dramatic shift in the premium format, to a point where people are currently afraid of having to deal with Order Megacolony, aka Order Colony. And today, I'm here to present you guys my thoughts on the deck, and more importantly, how you can play against this, because this is a deck that I think a lot of people are currently struggling against and trying to figure out how to play around because of how restrictive of a deck it is in the grand scheme of things. In this video, I'm going to be covering quite a few things. First off, the pros and cons of playing Order Megacolony, the matchups that it has, you know, just in between of me discussing this, certain tech cards you want to watch out for, or just cards in general that are going to be very prevalent in most of the lists that you'll see. And I'll, at the end, give you guys some example lists. The ones that came out of the last week's topping over at Antwerp. But yeah, without further ado, let's just dive into it. So I'm going to start with the pros, because there are quite a lot of them in general. So the first one being that this deck has a very decent mid to late game, thanks to the Dragon of Ruination and Book Order combo. Basically what the Dragon of Ruination does, it allows you to play an order from your drop zone without paying the cost. And so what the Book Order does is, the Book Order sits there and gives you +3 in hand, allows you to get a +10 to your front row, and it's just, considering that it's normally a Counterblast 3 and Soul Blast 3 for the effect, this is a massive advantage of using the Dragon of Ruination. It bypasses the heavy cost of the Book Order, and it is probably the biggest contention point as to why this deck is kind of problematic currently in the premium format. It also has pretty decent rearguards, honestly amazing rearguards that synergize with the entire strategy. You have the high class buff for the consistent countercharging, the Shadow Cloak that allows you to set up your drop zone with the order of your choice, the Giraffe Grade 2 that draws, gains power, and prevents movement of the rear guards to other circles, so you can't even intercept to guard with it, and you can't move it in between the column. As well, it also has really amazing grade 3s that restand a rear guard. For example, the Intrude Scissors that allows you to pay a Soul Blast, and the Hell Demise that I believe doesn't have a cost. Someone will correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong. And third, and probably the biggest thing, it has, outside of the Gridora stride, very strong secondary strides in the form of the Obturantis, which locks people out of calling new units, Overwhelm that gives you extra draws and drive checks, and then late game they have either the GB8 that just gains massive amount of power to all of your units for every card that's rested, and this is on top of having the Zoa plus Antlion combo in the late game. In case you don't feel like the GBA is going to help you that much, you could still go for the Zoa Antlion combo, restrict the Sentinels, and just force your opponent to guard a crap ton. On top of that, it also has really solid G-guards that pretty much get big based off of how many rear guards you have that are rested. On top of all of that, they still have access to the Relish Lady that gives you potential plussing off the draw and the countercharging and the soul charging, as well as some of the generic Cray Elemental G-guards, for example, Dismal that prevents something from being targeted, and just other cards in general that basically make the G-Zone really freaking solid as a whole. So while there are quite a few pros, we now have to talk about the cons because unfortunately there's still quite a bit. This deck is very prone to being rushed in the early to mid game. For example, in the Kagero matchup, if the Kagero player goes first, 9 times out of 10, unless you have big Kuds or heal guards, the cross is probably going to kill you on turn 3 because they'll start hitting their crits, maybe even potentially hitting their over trigger midway through, and it's not really ideal to have to deal with restanders like that. Excel decks like Pale Moon and Tachikaze, basically if any deck that goes super aggro and gets their combos going will most likely end most of your chances of winning if you're playing this deck, just because they'll generate too much advantage before you even get to your big push turns with the Ruination. Also, if this deck bricks, for example, if you misride the wrong grade 3, you're kind of in struggle street a bit, mostly because usually if, let's say, an order goes into the damage zone and you can't heal it off, or something else goes wrong, it's kind of problematic for you and you can't really get yourself off the ground. Now, I say this, but it can be mitigated depending on the matchup, and the Dragnoa Stride can sometimes help you get yourself in the right track, usually via stall. Yeah, it just... Basically, the Dragnoa Stride is going to help you stall until you get into the right grade 3, is more or less what I'm trying to get at. And the last major con that is probably the biggest con against this entire deck is the fact that control decks really are such a bad matchup for this deck. For example, in Arakami, pretty much a single Stunverse turn probably will most likely end most of your chances of winning, usually because all your orders will end up in the bind zone one way or another, and it's just yikes at that point. Late Joker, and specifically Chaos in particular, is pretty unwinnable as well because you really can't commit any rear guards because you have no way to get around the locking that they'll do, either via Lua Avalanche or just Chaos Universe, or any of those cards that basically start locking your shit, you're kind of screwed. And in the event you have to do the mirror, it's kind of a 50-50. Usually whoever gets the most advantage will 9 times out of 10 win. Though again, there are a couple other variations or factors that can go into effect into, this overall, mirror thought process. Alright, so now it's time to go ahead and take a look and analyze some of the deck lists that have won in the Springfest in Antwerp. Big shout out to Fuzzy Paradox for actually posting up all these deck codes, because I would have never been able to find it myself. But basically we're going to start off for Solemn's list, because I know he'll eventually cover his list in a deck profile, but I kind of wanted to quickly touch base on it because I mentioned it in the previous video. Basically, this is the most insane list I think I've seen out of all of Order Megacolony. Really, the biggest reason is that he only has his orders as 1-ofs, and that's kind of a problem because if they end up in damage or they don't show up at all, it becomes a problem. He does have some ways to mitigate this with the grade 3 Searcher and a few other noteworthy cards that will allow you to just get your effects off pretty well, but really it's kind of yikes if, this in particular list, if it bricks, it super bricks, more or less is what I'm trying to get at. Then we're going to move on to the second place winner, the second place deck list, I should say, and the second place deck list is more attuned to what you should expect. He runs 2 book orders, which is pretty much a decent number overall. He runs 1 of the Veils, and then he also, interestingly, runs an extra grade 3, which is kind of situational at best, but honestly, the rest of his list is pretty much near identical, with 1 major change, actually 2 major changes in particular, being he runs Zoa and he runs Dismal. Now, like I have stated before, the Zoa into the Antlion combo is very strong in its own right, and that sometimes can just help you win games in general, but also having Dismal allows you to prevent your opponent from targeting certain key cards that you need and able to push later on into the turns, and the rest of the list is pretty self-explanatory. It's more attuned to what we've seen before with other lists in general. And then finally, we have the third place list, is a lot more of the same thing as the second list, where, you're still running 2 book, you have, all the other... Interestingly, he runs the Mantis, which I could kind of understand a bit, but it is a bit situational in comparison to the rest of the deck, which is pretty standardized outside of running the grade 3 Dark Face, which... Yeah, I guess if you just want a protect marker, it helps in that situation, but then he also runs the Begenerate like Solemn's list, and he also runs a few other cards that isn't run in the other list, for example, being Seabreeze. Seabreeze is kind of just a very iffy card, and I think he's running this more so as a tech. He or she, I don't know who, I don't want to mess up their pronouns. But in general, this list is actually pretty solid. You also have the other Cray Elemental G-Guard that allows you to, I believe, draw and ditch, I'm pretty sure. And then you have all the other G units and G-Guards that basically make the deck what it is. And honestly, out of all of the 3 lists, I could see the second place list being more prevalent. But this one, everyone's gonna have their own unique tech, and I think that the adaptations that this person ran was actually more, it was definitely a lot more varied. I'll say that much. But honestly, out of all three, I would definitely say the second place deck list is less what you should be looking for. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of breakdown analysis type of video like I've done once or twice on this channel. But let me know in the comment section if you guys would want me to do this with other clans that I'm more familiar with in general. Because I did have to playtest a bit against this to kind of understand of what this deck is really capable of. Because I know, much like everyone else, like, you don't want to go against this deck. And if you're going to go against this deck, you need to know how to play against it. And in general, this is my overall take on Order Megacolony. And hopefully this provides to be at least a little bit useful for you guys in general. Let me know in the comment section if you want me to do another, you know, kind of like clan analysis video like this in the future, and I will most definitely do that. But until next time, guys, this is Noah, and I will catch you guys later. Bye!